Hi everyone. Just wanted to make a quick video here saying that I found a pretty silly argument on Twitter, which I'm still gonna call Twitter because Elon is okay with dead naming, so it's Twitter. Eric F. Martinez here has posted something that I assume I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, but I understand what this argument can be used for. He doesn't explicitly state that this is what he intends to use it for, but yeah, it can clearly be used to support some kind of supernaturalist mumbo jumbo, like arguing for the existence of a soul. I think this is an argument that either tries to prove idealism or, well, not necessarily idealism, because it talks about physical reality, which idealists don't believe exists. So substance dualism is probably what it's an argument for. The reason I wanted to make a video about this is, first of all, that it's a ridiculous argument. I'll dissect it, don't worry. But there's also a Dr. Scott M. Sullivan here who says, this is a good argument. And when I check out this guy, it says that he's a doctor, he's a Thomistic philosopher. Interests include metaphysics, logic, and the philosophy of religion. I don't know. I mean, Thomistic philosopher. I think that would mean that the doctorate is in theology, if I'm not completely mistaken. I doubt it can be in philosophy. I don't know. If so, I want to ask people: is this a crackpot? Because I think it's a crackpot. But it's definitely not a good argument, and I am going to explain why. See, the thing about the logic of an argument is you can evaluate it even if you don't have a doctorate in philosophy. And logic is what it is, no matter what qualifications the person talking about it happens to have. So let's just have a look at it. Now, it may be that I am unqualified at determining whether the premises are true or not, but the problem is there whether they are true or false. The problem is with the logic of the argument. So let's have a look at this. 1. Your identity over time is constant / unchanging. You remain you. You don't become someone else. This last part here is important to how that should be interpreted, I think, especially when we look at comments, which we will. 2. Physical reality is subject to change. For example, 98% of your body's atoms get replaced over the course of a year. I don't know if that's true, but let's accept it for the sake of argument. This part about your body's atoms being replaced at that rate. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. So let's just stipulate to it. 3. So identity over time is not caused by physical reality. In other words, your identity is constant, physical reality changes, therefore your identity cannot be a product of physical reality. So reasonably there is some supernatural component to your identity. That, I assume, is the point. Before I address it, I'm going to have a look at the objection here. Yes, I made a comment here. He has not responded. But anyway, here, your identity your identity doesn't change over time. I mean, you are a 100% different person than the one you have been in the kindergarten. Okay, English failed, but yeah, I clearly understand the point. And I mean, you change over time. You grow. You're not the same person you were when you were 3 years old. Unless you still are. And he responded, of course, things about you change. But these things that change are changes in you, not someone else. So indeed, this last part here is very important to how we should interpret what is meant by something being subject to change. If something changes, but is still the same thing, it's just the same thing in a different state, then it doesn't count as having changed. Those are the rules we use to determine whether something is changing or unchanging. Okay? So, in other words, the idea here is, to use an example from fiction, Luke Skywalker is a farm boy in episode 4, and he's a Jedi Master in The Mandalorian. But he's still Luke Skywalker, so his identity has not changed. In order to change, he would have to become Han Solo all of a sudden. Then his identity has changed. And I don't mean that he changes his name. I mean he's actually suddenly played by Harrison Ford. Don't mention the other guy. That movie never happened. That's what we mean when we talk about identity being subject to change. So now let's look at premise 2. Physical reality is subject to change. And then he gives an example here of a change occurring in physical reality. You know, much like you change as an individual when you grow, which doesn't count as change. Can anyone see the fallacy committed here now? Dr. Sullivan? What does change mean here, and what does change mean here? They mean different things. If we accept the rules that apply that in order for something to be considered subject to change in premise 1, then we must apply those same rules in premise 2 in order for the conclusion to follow. And in that case, premise 2 must be rejected, because premise 1 is true under one definition of change, and premise 2 is true under a different definition of change. Your fallacy, my friend, is equivocation. Dr. Scott M. Sullivan, please look it up. It should have been covered in some very basic course in philosophy that you must have taken in order to get that PhD. Unless, of course, it is in something else, which I suspect it is, if it is there at all. See ya.